You might know a little bit about Medicare, and you may have even watched some of our other videos about Medicare, but do you know what Medicare doesn't cover? By the end of this video, you'll understand not only what your choices are, but what might be the best options for you. We're Shannon and Michael, the founders of Healthcare Genius. For the best advice and information on retirement and healthcare, subscribe to our channel and click the bell for notifications when we come out with new videos.
So supplemental coverage, or Medigap coverage as it's known from a lot of people, are coverages that pick up where Medicare Part A and B leave off. Shannon mentioned in an earlier video, when you're under Part A, you have to pay a $1,300 and some deductible for hospital stay. And then if you're using Part B and the doctors, you're typically going to pay 20% of what those costs are. So you can imagine that if you went to the hospital and you had a surgeon working on you and they charged you $20,000, you probably don't want to be paying 20% of that cost. So that's why people purchase Medigap plans. There's a number of different options. They are basically named after letters, so Plan A or B or F. F tends to be the most expensive, but it's also the most comprehensive. So that's one thing that a lot of people will look at purchasing that plan. One thing to remember is that Medigap plans do not cover prescription drug cards or coverages, so you'll have to purchase a separate prescription drug benefit to cover the drugs that covered under Medicare.
Now, this confuses a lot of people because they get Medigap plans confused with Medicare Advantage plans. Now, Medicare Advantage plans are really complex, and so we're actually going to dedicate another video strictly to Medicare Advantage plans.
When you look at Medigap options, there are high deductible options where you're going to pay the first couple of $1,000s of coverage. Those premiums are going to tend to be less than, as we mentioned, the Plan F, which is going to be the most expensive. One thing to note is that if you are turning age 65 in 2020, so 65 after January 1st of 2020, Plan F and Plan C will no longer be available for you to purchase. Anybody who is currently 65 up to that date, December 31st, they still would have the option of purchasing Plan F or C, but you won't have that if you turn 65 afterwards. Another thing to think about when you're looking at Medigap plans can be underwritten, meaning that somewhere down the road you may have to qualify by answering health questions. This is something a lot of people don't know. It doesn't apply if you sign up for a Medigap plan when you're first eligible after you've retired and gone on to Medicare. So essentially you have 8 months to get one of these plans. But if you wait, so if you signed up for a Medicare Advantage and then 2 years later you haven't moved and you're in the same area and you want to get a Medigap plan, they can ask you health questions and you could be denied for that coverage.
If I enrolled in a Medigap plan at age 65, will my premiums stay the same for the next however many years that I'm alive, or do they change?
That's a great question, Shannon. They do change. They tend to increase. It depends on the insurance company. One thing about Medigap that's confusing to a lot of people is that different insurance companies offer the plans, but the plans themselves are they're all the same. So it does get a little confusing. So those increases are really dependent on the insurance company that's underwriting it. So they can go up, but that's a great question and something that people need to be aware of. The other thing when it comes to Medigap is that you are still on original Medicare, meaning that if you go and see a physician, it has to be a physician that accepts original Medicare. So you want to make sure when you're doing your planning that if you have a doctor that you really like, that you ask them whether they take original Medicare and whether they would be covered under the Medigap. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about Part D, prescription drug coverage. This is something that, as we mentioned, under Medigap is not covered, and people need to have prescription drug coverage. One thing about Medicare, they do penalize you if you don't sign up for Part D when you're first eligible. So you want to make sure that you get signed up, even if it's just a generic plan, which is one of the options that are available from a number of different insurance companies. But with Part D, They are plans that different insurance companies offer. They're going to differ from state and even local area that you live in. The costs are going to vary anywhere from $15 or $20 a month upwards of $100 a month. They're going to cover different drugs as far as the copays and out-of-pocket costs. Medicare does have a standardized drug plan that a lot of formularies use, but then they have the ability to improve upon that as they see fit, which a lot of them do because that's how they're attracting new business.
These plans can be, and most of the time are, expensive, but the reason that the majority of Americans opt into these plans is because if you don't have any coverage for drugs, you can end up spending more money than you can imagine. I mean, there are some specialty drugs that are life-saving drugs, granted, but they're upwards of $10,000 per month.
Yeah, which is tremendous. That's a great point, Shannon. And when you look at the prescription coverage under Part D, once you hit your maximum, which this year is $63.50, or in 2020 it'll be $63.50, once you hit that maximum, you're still responsible for 5% of some of the drug costs. So when you are looking at those expensive drugs, even with a drug plan, they can be very expensive, but certainly not $10,000, as Shannon mentioned.
So if you're on Medicare right now, what plan do you prefer? A Medigap plan or a Medicare Advantage plan? Let us know in the comments below. So let's talk about some of the other things that Medicare doesn't cover. Dental insurance. Dental insurance is not covered by Medicare. What is it? First, it's the out-of-pocket costs that are associated with any kind of dental work and with going in to even see your dentist. Most people need it. Even regular dental care can be expensive. And if you need to get something more serious like an implant, it can cost thousands and thousands of dollars for each tooth.
Shannon, you're right. That's a great point. My mother, who's 89, had to go in a year ago and have an implant done on her front tooth. Had to have it removed, root canal done, and then a pin put in, and then a new tooth put in. Total was about $5,000.
Another thing I want to touch on is vision insurance. Vision insurance is another thing that's not covered under Medicare, and it covers glasses, contacts, eye surgery. Again, when you get older, you do have more and more expenses associated with your eyes, and so it can be an important piece for a lot of people. Another thing that people ask us about quite frequently is hearing aids. Hearing aids are not covered under Medicare, and they can be
What was that, Shannon?
and they can be quite expensive. So it's important to think about that prior to enrolling and to know that it's going to be a cost that you're going to have to deal with. There are some discount programs out there, and so if you're somebody who thinks you'll need it, or if you do need it, make sure to look into that.
That's a great point. Again, my mom, using her as another example, her hearing aids are starting to wear out. She's telling me that they're anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000 for both of them. And in addition to the vision, dental, the hearing aids, there are other coverages that people might want to be thinking about that are ancillary to what their Medicare coverages are. Those range from accident insurance that would provide you a benefit if something happened. You know, that's one option. Critical illness or cancer policies that can pay you a benefit if something happens to you, that you get sick with heart attack, stroke, cancer, things like that. Long-term care insurance, that's another benefit that people should be looking at to protect themselves from the things that happen in life that we don't want to happen, but sometimes can't avoid.
So now that you know more about healthcare and retirement, if you'd like some personalized advice, feel free to become our client by clicking the link in our description. And make sure to subscribe to our videos and click the bell to be notified when we have new videos.